We're starting on Chapter 5, and that's consumer behavior. Any of you have had a psychology class, which many of you probably have. This is basically an application of psychology. It's about human behavior and why people do the things that they do. So that's what we'll cover. What we're taking is psychology and applying it to marketing. Our objectives for this chapter, we're going to define consumer behavior and look at that purchase decision-making process. And think about the last thing you purchased or used, be it a product or a service, and the process you went through to decide what you were going to buy and why it was that one versus a different one, and why that specific color or brand or model, or what restaurant, what meal in that restaurant, why you made those decisions, and the various pieces that influenced your decision. We're going to look at those internal factors and also the external factors, which are the situational factors. So that's what we're going to cover. This chapter is kind of fun because it is, again, about human behavior. And if anybody can explain why we do the things we do, good for you. Okay, let's define consumer behavior. It's a process we use, we being consumers, to select, purchase, use, and dispose of goods, services, ideas, or experiences to satisfy our needs or desires. And again, we do have those internal influences such as personality or motivation, the situational, as in what situation you're in right now, our family life stage, things like that, and social factors, culture, groups you belong to, and so on. So those are the pieces that influence us. Not all decisions are the same, and that goes for the product and the person. You may choose one product today for one reason, have a very similar situation in a week or a month, and make a very different decision. So trying to determine our behavior and predict it is very challenging. Extended problem solving, as in something that takes a lot of work or effort, such as what car you're going to buy, who you're going to marry, what home you're going to buy. Limited problem solving, something where you have to think through some pieces of this. And then habitual decision making, you know you have to get bread and milk on the way home, so you stop and get it, and you don't put a whole lot of thought into it. What marketers do then is look at these different kind of decision making situations, and we have to market to those very differently. Extended problem solving versus that habitual problem solving. And the examples on this figure are true, but they could be very, very different. For instance, level of involvement. They call a box of cereal habitual decision making. However, if you are on a very restricted diet, or there are certain products, certain ingredients that you can't eat or don't want to eat, that could be an extended problem-solving situation. So there's no absolute rule as to where any of these fall. It's depending upon that situation, that person at that time. Level of involvement, you would think for a new car it would be high, maybe. The risk involved depends on the situation again. Information processing, what do we have to attend to? Where's the information coming from? The learning model, do we look at long-term thinking about the kind of information we use, need, gather? Do we focus on behavioral learning? And what kind of marketing actions are needed to provide this kind of information so consumers to make decisions? If an extended problem solving, is very likely that sales will be involved as opposed to or instead of advertising, those sorts of things. So you have to think about this, but realize there's no rule as to when you use when. It's all situation specific. Level of involvement, I have moved so many times that purchasing a home, I've done it so many times in a weekend because that's how much time you have when you move from one university in Florida to University of Ohio. That's about all the time you have. And I've done it so many times that I know how to do it very effectively. The first time I bought a home, however, there was a huge level of involvement because I didn't have a clue what I was doing or what to look for or how to do it or how to get the loan or anything. So it really depends a lot on your previous experience, the interest you have in the product or the situation. Are there perceived risks, the situation you're in, and social visibility? When I moved to Cleveland, I bought a very nice home, and it was a real nice family neighborhood, and the white picket fence and the big oak trees, and it was quite pleasant. But I didn't realize that there was an east and west side feud going on in Cleveland. The east side clearly were the affluent upper crust of Cleveland society, and the west side was not. Well, I mistakenly bought on the west side of Cleveland. Therefore, I am relatively low life when I lived there, and people can imagine why I bought on that part of Cleveland. I thought it was lovely. I love living there. I didn't realize we had this social stigma, but oh well. But that's a social visibility situation, and you just never know when those are going to pop up. This is called a simple consumer decision-making model, even though it isn't. Realize that you have your input, that top part, the process, which goes on in your head when you're making decisions, and the output, which is your behavior, your evaluation of the situation, and so on. Understand that of all of these, and look at the many, many, many pieces involved in your making a decision like this, that the only thing marketing has control over is that very first box up there in the top left-hand corner. Those are your 4 Ps. That's all we influence. So when people say that marketing makes people buy things that they really don't want or need, that's truly not correct at all. All these other pieces go into that. Marketing only has the 4 Ps to work with. Okay, step 1, again, is problem recognition. And we will go into business-to-business buying behavior in our next chapter. So this relates strictly to consumer decision-making. And problem recognition is when you see some kind of gap between your current state and your desired state. You are pursuing a degree because you currently don't have one and feel that that will be beneficial to have one. So the problem recognition was, I can't get the job I want without the degree. Then you went about doing things to try to correct that gap between current situation and needed situation. So that's the kind of thing that marketers look at, is how can we help consumers get to where they want to be. Information search, and this is easier but a bit more challenging today with the internet. There is so much information out there where you can get specific knowledge about products and situations. The problem becomes there's just too much information. Which information can we trust, and so on. But somewhere you need to do an information search. The number one way we make decisions is through word of mouth, what we hear from friends, family, situations, and so on. You evaluate your alternatives, if you have alternatives. If you are the first company out there with a new product, there are no alternatives. So, do I, for instance, a pizza, do I stop at a pizza place and get one? Do I buy a frozen one at the store and fix it at home? Do I get one from Papa Murphy's and it's almost there but I have to bake it? All those are your alternatives, and lots of things go into your decisions. Product choice. Factors that go into making this decision simpler, easier. What information do we have? What do we need? What's our experience been, and so on. Don't forget that we always evaluate what we did. You've heard of that term, cognitive dissonance. That's where you bought something, get it home, and go, why in the world did I do that? I tend to do that with food. I go to Dorothy Lane Market, which, for those of you not familiar with Dayton area, is a kind of a, I don't know if it's high-end, but it's expensive. But a lot of ready-made natural foods there. And I buy all this stuff, then I get home and go, wonder why I did that. I don't even like that stuff, but there it is. So that's cognitive dissonance. And what marketers hope to do is not let that happen or correct it when it does occur. But your satisfaction really is related to what your expectations were and whether or not the product or service met those expectations. Perception. We're going to talk about some of those traits that go into that process of you making those decisions. First of all, we have to have selective exposure. You have to be exposed to the marketer's message or product. The problem becomes that we distort things. We don't hear it correctly. We didn't give it enough time. Even things like colors, people who don't perceive colors correctly. Then selective retention. Marketers have to make sure that you are exposed to the message, don't distort it, and retain it for your decision-making processes. People's decision is influenced by perception. Our perceptions are really pretty bad. I'm going to try to get a perceptual test on here for you. And if so, I'll let you know, but it's very intriguing, so I'll try to get that for you. Maslow, the dreaded motivation. This is Maslow's need hierarchy. And this is, first of all, you have physiological needs. Once those are taken care of, safety needs, and then so on and so forth, with self-actualization being that ultimate goal. And this is how we're motivated. If you go back and read Maslow's original research, he did not say that there is a hierarchy, but rather that we had these 5 sets of motivators, and at any given time we might be motivated by one thing or another. Learning. There are a lot of different learning theories. How do people learn? When do they learn? How do they learn? How do they retain the information? Learning theories as in behavioral learning versus cognitive learning. A lot of information on that. A lot of people feel that the only way to show that learning has occurred is if there is a behavioral change. Some of that is being disputed now, but there are many, many theories of learning. But the point for marketing is that you have to learn about the product, learn about the service, and so on. Attitudes. Everybody's got them, good or bad. There are 3 components of an attitude. That's the affect, the emotional side, the cognition, the beliefs or the knowledge you have, and the behavior, the intention to do something. You may have a wonderful emotional feeling toward a product or service, but you may not actually purchase it. All of these 3 have to go together. So the feeling, the knowing, the doing to make up the attitude. Then, even then, if you intend to do something, you may be somehow prohibited from doing so. But attitudes have to be positive, and they don't change too easily. Personality. And why in the world they would put this horrible photograph in here, I don't know. Isn't that awful? Ooh. Cover it up. Personality is that set of psychological traits that each person has. And realize that your personality shows itself differently in different situations. For instance, myself as a professor versus myself as a sister, myself as a daughter, myself as a friend, myself in professional situations, myself as a photographer, could be very different. You could see very different sides of me. The problem with personality is attempting to figure out in any given situation which personality we need to market to. That's very challenging. It oftentimes is very challenging also to determine what you feel your self-concept is. How would you describe yourself? Sometimes you don't match what other people think at all. Try that and see what happens. Age, yeah. We'll talk about this a little bit when we get to Chapter 7 on segmentation. But clearly that there are many demographics that influence how we purchase things: age, gender, income, occupation, education, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. Lifestyle. This again is a segmentation variable. We'll talk about this a little bit more. But how you purchase things really is reflected by the lifestyle you choose to have. There are those who are adventurous versus those who are rather sedentary and so on. So psychographics helps to understand someone's lifestyle. And you market to those. Those are your activities, interests, and opinions. Situational influences. Now this is the part that's outside of your brain. The physical environment that you're in could certainly influence how you purchase. If you go into a very crowded store, you might buy differently than if it's a more open, spacious area. Time poverty, we just don't have enough time to do things, so sometimes we make bad decisions because of that. Culture, that influences what we do, and culture is defined as values, beliefs, customs, and tastes produced or practiced by a group of people. Look at things like holidays, Christmas, Easter, the 4th of July, all the rituals and things that we have, so different by different value systems. And marketers need to try to tailor products to those cultural values. Subculture are cultures within cultures, if you may put it that way, microcultures. Hispanic, Asian, African American, those really aren't subcultures, they're major cultures. But something like you may be part of a Wright State student culture, or you could belong to a fraternity or sorority, and you have a Greek culture, so those could be considered subcultures. Opinion leaders, these are the people who really influence what we do. And we'll talk about these again when we get to product adoption. But these are the people we really attend to. These are the people who we respect, admire. Now, there's also the negative side. There are people who influence us, but in a negative way, so that we tend to not want to do things that they do, so we try to be not like them. But opinion leaders usually are the first set of people to buy things. Therefore, marketers really tend to market to opinion leaders. And who these people are vary by type of product or service. Gender roles, and this varies by culture, by country, by what is expected of men versus women. And these are also changing within our own culture as we evolve, as the United States evolves. Our sex roles are constantly changing and evolving. Okay, this is a piece that we know very little about, and this is how do people get rid of products? We don't know. You can keep it, you can use it right away, keep it temporarily, give it away. But we really don't know a lot about this. And if you want to become very famous and wealthy, try to understand and help companies understand how people use and get rid of products. Very interesting part to think about. Okay, that's it for consumer behavior. We will go to business behavior next, but I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.